Uhuru. Uhuru. Uhuru, and welcome to this event hosted by the African People's Solidarity Committee. The title of tonight's event is Che Guevara, the Cuban Revolution and Black Liberation, and the role white people can play under the leadership of the African Revolution. My name is Jesse Neville. I am a proud member of the African People's Solidarity Committee and have the honor to chair our mass organization, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And I'm joined here with the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Uhuru, everybody. It's so great to be here. So great to see everyone on tonight. Uhuru.
Uhuru. So we're really excited to get into our discussion tonight on this very interesting and important topic. And I just wanted to start off by letting people know that the African People's Socialist Party formed the African People's Solidarity Committee in 1976 with the mandate that we organize other white people to build the movement for reparations to African people, to build white solidarity with Black power under the leadership of the African working class. This is our assignment, and we have the honor to work directly under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. We want to salute our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, the founder and leader of the Uhuru movement, and Deputy Chair Ona Zane Yeshitela. And we want to give them a huge round of applause and salute. And I also want to salute my direct leadership in the African People's Solidarity Committee, Chairwoman Penny Hess, who again we'll have the opportunity to hear from in tonight's program. So before we get started, if you're tuning in tonight on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this video far and wide. Bring more and more people into this discussion to be able to participate and receive this very important political education that tonight's event is sure to be. And when you subscribe to our channel, you will actually get alerts from YouTube anytime we post a new video or go live. So we want to strongly recommend that everybody go ahead and take 10 seconds right now to like and subscribe. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're tuning in on Facebook, please share this live stream with friends. Share it in groups. Share it far and wide. As Secretary General Loezi Kinshasa always calls on people to do, right now, I challenge everybody to go share this with 50 people. Before I'm done giving this introduction, that many more people will know that this event is happening tonight. And let us know in the comments where you are tuning in from. This will be an interactive program tonight. There will be time for question and answer session, discussion. So take notes as you're listening to the presentations, and you can put your questions in the chat if you're watching on Zoom, or you can put them in the comment section of Facebook or YouTube. And we have our great chat moderators who will be sending those questions and comments into us as the program goes forward so that they can be addressed by our speakers later tonight. So I want to let people know that this event is a fundraiser for the beautiful building that we are in right now, that we're hosting this event from, the Uhuru Solidarity Center, the national headquarters of the African People's Solidarity Committee. Beautiful organizing center located on the south side of St. Louis with a banner outside that proclaims unity through reparations. So you will be supporting this building, which is owned by the party's Black Star Industries. When you contribute to the fundraising goal tonight, you can go to apscuhuru.org/donate and start contributing now. And we'll be shouting out and thanking all of our donors as we go through tonight's program. So we are very excited today for our featured presenters. APSC Chairwoman Penny Hess will give an overview, and then we will hear an incredible interview that Chairwoman Penny conducted with Mwezi Odom, the Secretary General of the African People's Socialist Party, and Yejide Oramila, the President of the African National Women's Organization, who each recently traveled to Cuba. And we'll get to hear more about that and the significance of that to the struggle today. So without any further ado, I am honored to turn it over to Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Thank you so much, Jesse. And again, I want to join everybody or join you in welcoming everybody here tonight. This is a really important study. At the African People's Solidarity Committee has a study once a month and an event. And actually, this is one of our events, so I'm glad that you're here. And as we said, we're also requesting and calling on people to donate to help repaying the mortgage of this powerful building that is owned by the African People's Socialist Party. So I want to join in saluting Chairman Omali Yeshitela, my leadership, who leads not only the African People's Socialist Party, but the African People's Solidarity Committee and other organizations of the party. And we work under the leadership of the African Revolution with the mandate to go into the white community and win reparations and genuine solidarity for the right of African people and thereby all oppressed and colonized peoples to fight for and win their national liberation for self-determination and sovereignty, a struggle that continues today, as we can see throughout the world and here inside the borders of the United States. So Chairman Omali Yeshitela has always fought for the total liberation of and socialism for Africa and African people and the unity of all oppressed and colonized peoples of the world. And as the chairman has always stated, the colonial question is the driving force of history. And the more that we can understand the party's political theory of African internationalism, the more that we can see that this system is, as Chairman Omali Yeshitela calls it, the colonial mode of production. Colonialism is the DNA and essence of the social system that we live in, and it explains why the world is the way it is and why white people overall have prosperity, have enjoyment of the law, and many other quality of life quite different than the conditions faced in the African community, and especially in the African working class community. And here in St. Louis, that is a perfect example of that. So, the theory of African internationalism recognizes that this social system was built and maintained on imperialist war and occupation, colonial domination, enslavement, and this is how the chairman can say that capitalism is parasitic. It is there to suck the blood of the peoples on the planet Earth for the benefit of the few. And the colonized African working class is fighting for liberation and leads the struggle against this parasitic system and forwards the struggle for social justice, and as we say, the anti-colonial free speech movement. The chairman has always made it clear that African and oppressed peoples can win, but they must have a party. They must have a disciplined African working class led organization of cadre, politically and organizationally united to make the struggle to win. Otherwise, it's just an idea. And for an oppressed and colonized people to go up against the state power, the only thing that it has, it doesn't have resources, it doesn't have armies, it doesn't have the Pentagon, it has organization, and a steeled organization, a party led by the African working class, the African People's Socialist Party, is an incredible force that can win and change the future and bring about real power in the hands of African people and oppressed peoples as a whole. So APSC, the African People's Solidarity Committee, is the cadre organization of the party, and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is the mass organization. We are white people under the party's leadership, and this allows us, as the colonizer population, to be able to express principled and genuine solidarity with African people and to be able to play a part. We have a role to carry out in our front of the revolutionary struggle for African national liberation. And we want people to be free. We want all people to be free. We don't want to, turn on the news or look online every single day and see starvation in Gaza on the Palestinian people's own land. We don't want to see Mexican people, indigenous people on their own land here being gunned down and having to fight to be able to determine, to be able to live in peace and prosperity on their own stolen land. And we don't want to see the conditions that we know here in St. Louis as the Del Mar Avenue divide, where the poverty, the wealth gap between assets of the white community and the African community in this city are a difference of $800,000 per family, wealth of the white community versus the poverty of the African community here in the city that was just hit and incredibly devastated by a tornado that plopped right down in the African working class community, right where the Uhuru House is, where Chairman Omali Shatella and Deputy Chair live, where the African community lives. Incredible devastation. That is not over yet. But when it also touched down in an upscale white community, they were fine. I mean, they had damage, but they have insurance that I'm sure that they're getting tons of resources. The north side African community here, 70% of the people had no insurance. whatsoever. And of course, the city isn't doing anything about it. So tonight, we're talking about Cuba. And one of the few countries in the world today whose society is openly stated socialist and communist, where the people don't have to worry about a tornado coming in because the housing is provided for all people. Food is provided, although the US has a very devastating embargo against Cuba, which creates a lot of poverty there, and we'll see in some of the discussion. And in Cuba, it is led, the state and the society is led by the state and the party, the Communist Party, and that it is built on democratic centralism, which is the revolutionary form of organization that carries out and makes a revolutionary society possible and truly empowers the people. There's no place for passivity under democratic centralism. There is the requirement that everybody participate in the future and in the work of creating life and for the people every single day. And this past weekend marked the 72nd anniversary of the Cuban Revolution. Two leading members of the African People's Socialist Party, Secretary General Moise Odom and African National Women's Organization President Yejide Oramila, went to Cuba recently, and we are interviewing them to talk about that and how the Cuban society and government reflect the African People's Socialist Party's vision of genuine African liberation, real power in the hands of the African working class, that we can see being built here in St. Louis by the Office of the Deputy Chair, Onizine Shatella, the Black Power Blueprint, creating the people's land and dual and contending power. So on July 26, 1953, a small band of revolutionary fighters in Cuba made a courageous assault on the Moncada Barracks, a military base in Santiago de Cuba, on the eastern tip of the island. This bold action launched the Cuban Revolution, which declared victory on January 1st, 1959. Cuba lies just 90 miles south of Florida. The revolutionary movement was led by Cuba's beloved revolutionary leader, Fidel Castro. And after the Moncada assault, Fidel and other heroic Cuban revolutionaries, including Che Guevara and Camilo Cienfuegos, gathered in Mexico to begin to train a guerrilla army to actually take power. And it was in 1956 that Ernesto Che Guevara was a young doctor from Argentina, and he was nicknamed Che, which from what I've read means guy or, something like that, in Argentinian Spanish. And he joined the revolutionary forces in Mexico. Che Guevara was on the Granma, the rickety old yacht that carried Fidel Castro and his revolutionaries across the Caribbean to Cuba in 1956. Che joined the 26th of July movement in Mexico City and sailed with them to Cuba with the goal of overthrowing the US regime of the neo-colonial dictator Fulgencio Batista. Guevara played a key role in the subsequent guerrilla campaign. The voyage was pretty scary because this yacht was just like totally beat up and barely floated. I've read some really amazing books just about that trip, which was really about 1,000 nautical miles. But it was amazing. They did it. When they landed in Florida, they got stuck in the mangrove swamps. Anybody who's been to Florida, like when you come into the water, the beach, there's a lot of places, all these routes, and they had to navigate that. But nevertheless, the revolution waged mostly then in the Sierra Madre Mountains of Cuba was victorious after about 6 years of struggle that led to a socialist people's government and society. Chairman Omali Yeshitela explained in a presentation in 1997, he said, the Cuban Revolution disrupted all that US colonial domination of the island. That's why US imperialists hate Cuba. Cuba became an example for all the world's poor people who said, if Cuba can do it, we can do it. Nobody symbolized the struggle of poor people against a powerful Yankee empire to the north more than Che Guevara. Che was a revolutionary, an extraordinary revolutionary, a leader in Cuba's revolution who fought in other countries as well. Chairman Yeshitela has frequently stated that he has always seen himself as very fortunate to have been born in a time when revolution was the main trend in the world, meaning especially throughout the second half of the 20th century, there were revolutions in China, just in all throughout Africa, in Latin America, and it was a very exciting time in the 1960s and 70s when all of these revolutions were winning, and there was an incredibly powerful understanding that the people, the African working class, impoverished people, those who have been colonized and oppressed, were taking power to dominate their own lives. Today, Cuba remains one of the last places on the planet where the communist revolution was victorious and still exists today, despite 66 years of US political, economic, and military attacks on the country and endless unsuccessful attempts to overthrow the revolution. So I'm going to show this powerful interview again with Hands Off Uhuru Chair and Secretary General Mwezi Odom and ANWO President and member of the National Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party, Yejide Oranmila. So let's go on and see this video. Welcome, Yejide Oranmila, President of the African National Women's Organization, and Mwezi Odom, Secretary General of the African People's Socialist Party and Chair of the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition. It is an honor to have both of you with us today. So President Yejide and Secretary General Mwezi, first of all, you both were in Cuba at different times. I believe that Secretary General Mwezi was in Cuba maybe last year, and President Yejide, you just got back a few months ago. So I would really like to, first of all, overall, just hear your overall impression of Cuba. How was it to be there? And I know we're going to see some amazing photos, so it seems very, very exciting. But let's start with you, President Yejide. You were just there, and then we'll go to Secretary General Mwezi.
Overall, I thought it was a great experience. I think it helped really to go with a political group to go to Cuba, because there is a way that you can be in Cuba and not really understand like what the people go through and how you understand the politics of if you just went as a tourist, even though that's not allowed. Like it's a different way to understand it. But I felt the experience of going there with the political group and still meeting with different facets of government and labor union organizing and newspaper and media and people who are the workers who are also there taking care of us. I think that it was really, and students, and I think it was a really great experience to understand how deeply committed, the people, the infrastructure is to making sure that Cuba upholds the revolution. And I thought also, just generally speaking, that is one of the most, despite all of the resource difficulties and not being able to get things to fix things up, I still thought it was one of the most developed Caribbean islands in terms of like the streets and the people and I also felt like the life of people there was pretty laid back, when you think of Cuba, and historically, as a fighting people, but like folks was just, working, going to school, going to, hanging out in the plaza, walking their dogs, things like that. And, I think that if we allowed bourgeois media to indicate to us, how the people are suffering, even though there's we could talk about that a little bit more. But I thought, generally speaking, like, Cuba was a beautiful place. Um, but I think overall, like, it's really glaring, how the U.S. blockade has really had a detrimental impact on the life quality of the people on the island, which is a political and strategical aim of the United States government to create dissension. So we could talk about that a little bit more. But I thought it was a really great experience for me.
Great, thank you. And Chair Moise, do you have
Uhuru.
any comments?
Yeah, well, I just want to appreciate this discussion and this opportunity to reflect back and, chart the way forward on the question of Cuba. And I did want to just unite and appreciate what President Yesterday already shared, and I know we'll get into that more as well. But it was helpful to go with a political group in the sense that part of how we even informed that relationship with the U.S. Hands Off Cuba Committee was through the work of the Hands Off Uhuru Committee. We were, following the raids in 2022, we were out on the streets and met this organization there and saw this as an attack on the attack of freedom of speech. And so I just think that was an important aspect of it, and what President Yesterday shared around just the impression that I had was that, the people stand in, they love their government. They love, they honor and they respect the revolution and they fight to uphold that and battle, with the battle of ideas is something that they're very clear on. And so they're, very clear in terms of the position that Cuba holds in terms of, leaders in the anti-colonial struggle or revolutions of the Americas and everywhere. But the people are also, they're starving, and it's genocide, and so that was something that was so clear for those of us who can see that. And I think one thing I'll just say, and then I'm sure that we'll say more, but so I appreciate the chairman so much and the theory of African internationalism, because we can go to Cuba and see the wins and all the victories, but still know that it's not over. And oftentimes one of the, struggles that we would engage with, at least for me, in terms of other, political organizations and others there, is that, Cuba is still not even free, and that has to be clear. Like, that's so evident for those of us who see it as that struggle, and that the struggle of against colonialism, and struggle for African people against colonialism will, as we say, as the chairman says, will free up the whole world. So I'll just say that. And uhuru.
Uhuru, wow, I really appreciate both of your just observations. As somebody who's never been there, but I've certainly seen a lot of slideshows of people who have been there. So yeah, I just really appreciate this. And let me just say this, and maybe both of you could comment on this before we go on, but the chairman has talked about how, quote, as African people in the US, you are part of the revolution of the Americas. He says, we, meaning Africans, are part of the revolutionary process that hungry, poor, oppressed, and brutalized people, the hated, despised, and spat upon people all over the world are trying to make. That is particularly true here in what we call the Americas. And, just to see like what you've talked about, the people who are so visibly oppressed inside the United States and in most places in the world have power. If you could just talk about that, President Yesterday, if you could.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very clear quote. And really, I'm happy to be a part of the African people struggling for liberation of Africa, an African nation in the U.S. and the Americas. And when we went to Cuba, I was struck, by how many African people there was, because the representation of Cubans in the U.S. is really light skinned or white. And in Cuba, like mostly, like, you saw Black people, all Africans, all the way. And of course, there's a mixture and all that stuff, right? Like, so, but it's very clear of, you know, who who the revolution really benefited, right? The poor and oppressed, particularly those who had been racially oppressed in Cuba, and how the equalization of society, or the struggle to equalize society. I don't think that it's there yet, right? Like there's still things that can be done to equalize society has really benefited, the entire society, not just African people there. So much so that I found um, that there was really like a clear Cuban identity, right? Like it was a clear, like, I'm Cuban, right? And the African may come in at some point. They recognize the African culture and all of these other things, but like very clear national pride to be Cuban and all that comes along with. And but somebody had said to me, yeah, like, mostly the white ruling class of Cuba, they were able to take their resources and get out of Cuba. And even now, as people are experiencing really hard times, a lot of people who may have their family members in the U.S. are relying on those resources and mostly white, or very light-skinned Cubans who are really helping their families at home. Meanwhile, the Africans are still there, making life and doing all these things. I think what is very clear to me in Cuba was, I think that the part of the Cuban identity, and not really recognizing how colonialism is impacting them, even though they have all these freedoms and things like that. That the colonialism as a world, situation condition is still impacting them on the island of Cuba, and that really aligning oneself or themselves with the African national struggle would be really beneficial, I think, for the Cuban Revolution to push it forward. So yeah, the chairman's quote is what the chairman said is really accurate in terms of like really taking the revolution to its final conclusion. And the African national identity is really important in making sure that the entire world is experiencing the freedom and liberation that African people and all oppressed people deserve after suffering under colonialism for so long.
Wow, I mean, that's really powerful to hear that Cuba is African. Cuba is African, and of course all of its culture, that if you've seen that, of course that is so true. And Secretary General Moise, I know that the chairman has pointed out, just based on what President Yejide was just talking about, that the second largest movement of Marcus Garvey, second only to in the United States, was in Cuba. And that, he's always said that in a way that had something to contribute towards the revolutionary movement that is there. You think of Haiti and the struggle, how Haiti, which is just a few miles really from Cuba, and then to see Cuba and just the African leadership is so powerful. So if you have any comments on that as well.
Yeah, that I appreciate that. What you just raised. I appreciate President Yesterday response and just the question of, Garvey, and because one of the, just building off of what President Yesterday has shared around, the party has always been clear under the chairman's leadership that we plan to self-govern. And, in terms of even just the party's, when it was founded, as the chairman says about, there was the whole theme, or I forgot how he says it. And I always, around, it was a time when revolution was the main trend in the world. And at that time, it's so important because so what I'm reflecting on right now as we're talking is when we were there this last time or last year, we were able to say like one Africa, one nation. And like the question of like Africans, in terms of the chairman's quote, whether we're Africans in the US or Africans everywhere around the world, we are part of that, history of the, revolution of the Americas. And I am reminded of how important the Uhuru movement is and what the chairman has built and the structures. And because if we plan to self-govern, we have to solve all these contradictions. And that's what the Cubans have done. They have, and it's led by the workers. It's a worker state, but solving the problems of healthcare, of education, of, just, and then the responsibility and the humanitarian aid that they put out in the world. And I, what President Yejide was sharing around, it's just like we need to get to that, it's the question of colonialism that has to steer this and that will steer this, project if we are to be successful. But so what I'm reflecting on right now is the importance of, the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement having been there to witness for us too. This is what it will look like when we're free, so to speak. And it's not impossible. It's just happening under the boot of colonialism. And so I just think that that's something also that I appreciate the chairman for, because he has always helped us to remind us that that is our revolution too, and that we are a part of that. And so there's it's all connected.
Uhuru. Well, yes, I think that, President Yejide, you talked about the US attacks and the blockade, which its goal is to literally starve the people. And it's certainly, just some of the ways that I've heard that the people take it on to deal with it, to be able to eat. There's no empty land, et cetera. But also to bring the message of hands off Uhuru there, which is also a US attack and blockade against the African liberation movement, and to see those banners being upheld in all kinds of situations in Cuba is very powerful. If there's any comments on that?
Yeah, I think going with the political group, but also going not just with it, but being a political group, like being a political organization, being the African People's Socialist Party, hands off Uhuru representative on the ground. I think there's a very clear delineation between who we are and who some of the other organizers who were on the trip, right? There is a character in our work and a mission, and I think things can be taken in the abstract, but with the Hands Off Uhuru campaign as an ongoing fight against U.S. domination of African people, we are engaged in a struggle that many other people are not engaged in. And we can say that we've won, and that this is an ongoing battle, and that we're seeking solidarity and unity with African people and other people who are against oppression. And it was really a unifying piece of literature to bring with me and to be able to talk about in many different situations. And mostly people knew Nwezi from the year before, because when I went into a space, it's like, oh, I was like, yeah, right on. That was a great feeling, right? To go to these things. Like they knew, and they was like, Uhuru, I miss her so much. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm here.
Wow, that's exciting. That's beautiful. Wow.
That's great. Yeah, it was great to be in that situation with as a political organizer. I actually think that we should, I don't know how we can, but we should organize a trip to Cuba as the movement.
You've got to. I agree. That would be very powerful to have Chairman Omali Shatella, Deputy Chair Ona, and the whole Uhuru movement there. That would be amazing. That would be really amazing to have the Burning Spear editor, Director Akile in the Grandma office.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That would just be really, really powerful. And I'm sure very mobilizing for people there as well. So, let me ask you a few more things here. So, just the conditions of people, and I think you addressed this a little bit. Before I ask you that, I want to ask you something else. The whole thing that I have heard about in the past, and did you experience it? the committees to defend the revolution that are organized all the way down to the neighborhoods, the senior citizens centers and the schools, and that just the level of organization people often remark upon, that, you know, somebody can't be, that the health workers go out to the people. The people don't go to the clinic. The health workers go around. Are you okay today? Are you, you know, checking? This is what I've heard in the past. Did you experience?
I didn't experience it in that way. I think that, you know, you were there for May Day, right? So that's the whole entire country mobilizes for May Day. Like nobody's on the streets. Like they're ready for 3 a.m. in the morning wake up
Wow.
for the parade, and they are down at the end of, like, before, when we getting up there lazily, you know, at 4, you know, it's the whole a march is already organized. Folks
They were already lined up in
they're already back there. It's like, you know, millions of people in the street before they come across the procession. So I would imagine that was a part of the neighborhood labor. What I found very great to understand, I really appreciated the internship at the labor organization, because that helped me really understand how much of a worker state Cuba is.
Wow.
You don't know, like, everything is organized through labor unions. Right? Like,
Wow.
labor union has the unions have I think like 20 something, maybe more than that, because I think the parliament, however, the people's, or I forget how it's designated for Cuba, but the ruling body of Cuba, I think it's like 200 and something people, and I think of those seats, I'm gonna get this wrong, I'm thinking 20, but it could be more like 50 of that belongs to the labor unions, and they have a significant influence on in just daily life. Every person in Cuba is a part of a union.
Wow.
Every person in Cuba, down to the nail shop owner. She is a member of a union, and the union is involved in the daily lives of its workers, ensuring that they get all they need from their bosses, and work with the bosses and the workers to ensure that they are getting fair pay and that they have the best conditions and things like that. And so that's how I experienced it in terms of teaching, listening to how Cuba's labor movement is organized, recognizing how tied to the government and making laws and policies that protect its workers and the citizens, and also seeing that organization through the May Day parade. I think it all just, you know, that to me was how I understood it, and saw, you know, the organization of its workers and people in Cuba.
Wow, that's very, very just inspiring to hear.
Well, and I got
SG Moisey, please.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Joan. Yeah, well, I just wanted to, just before this question, or if there's others, but I did on the visit that we took in 2023, which is we were able to see the how are they characterized? The committees for defense of the revolution. We saw one of this, and so what I appreciate about what President Yezhedin just laid out was, like, you know, it's a part of the fabric, right, of Cuba, and all the way down to the neighborhoods. And what was so inspiring for me when we got to experience that was it was led by 2 African. First of all, it was children everywhere. It was a neighborhood that reminded me of exactly what we have done on the ground, even in St. Louis. They had a basketball court. There were children playing there. There was a playground, and the housing was right there, and they had gardens, and, you know, it was just total unity with the whole thing. And
Wow.
it's like, it was beautiful. And yeah, and then, like President Ye just said, all the way down to the, you know, celebration on May Day. And it's something that was so inspiring to see in terms of the question of identity and the unity as well. But that was really powerful. And I just thought about, you know, when we come, I mean, I was like, that's deputy chair and that's this. And I was just like pointing out everything that was, yeah, it was beautiful. So, yeah,
Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful. Powerful. Very exciting. Very, very
Yeah.
exciting. Well, how do you just say some things about, I think before we were talking about, I refer to them as the barefoot doctors, the medical brigades that go out to the people. Did you see that? I mean, when you look at this country where people become doctors to have a ticket to a higher income, or, you know, the upper petty bourgeoisie or whatever, versus the stand in Cuba for health as a human right, it seems.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, SGYZ.
And well, yeah, I just want to appreciate that question, and also what it says about what an honor it is for, just how much they uplift their doctors too. I mean, at these parades, the, doctors are, celebrated. And we saw that, during COVID, and, some of that was put out in in the world in that way. And, just in terms of, like you said, doctors will go and, people see it as a prestigious thing to be able to leave your country and go serve. But they're, um, these doctors are assigned to particular neighborhoods, and the people, grow up knowing their doctor and they know their health, and just the human aspect of how Cuba understands the question of life and health. And um, you talked about this as we were coming on, Chairwoman Penny, around, Cuba's trying to help during Hurricane Katrina, and just the medical internationalism, which is how they characterize it,
Wow, that's great.
their responsibility for, not just on the medical, but also their support for Africa, during, the struggles in Angola and South Africa as well. And so, and, those were doctors there too. So, uhuru.
Wow.
I
Well,
do want
yeah.
to add to that too.
Mhm.
Part of the contingent was to deliver medical supplies that was
That's
donated
right.
to the United States, and so we did go the um, Garcia Hospital. I forget the first part of the hospital name. I think it's more complicated than I can say right now. Calixto Garcia
Yes.
Hospital. Calixto
Wow.
Garcia. And this is a big campus. Is very different. It's like different buildings that represent like different areas and departments. But I want to tell you that the medication, the medicines, the ibuprofen that we brought was desperately needed. So
Wow.
while we have medical professionals, the blockade has prevented them from getting the things that could really help treat some really serious, illnesses, right? These are very skilled doctors. They've been taught the very best, but there's only so much that they can do, to the point where we saw a man who was on crutches and he had an open gash in his foot. He was on crutches, which tells us that he had crutches, right? But he said that they only could put sugar in his wound because they didn't have any other kind of, because sugar is a natural, and and they can do all these, but they didn't have, the
The
medication that they
anesthetic.
needed
Yeah.
to close up the ulcer, right? Like so there are things. And I was also told that during COVID, while they quickly got a vaccine together, they had no needles, no syringes. So they had to do this all-out campaign to get syringes donated so that they can vaccinate their entire population, which they thankfully did. So I wanted to say that
Amazing.
this U.S. attack on Cuba, the people have the will, right? And when you have the will, you would overcome anything. You would solve any problems. But there are real contradictions that they're experiencing because of this embargo on them, and the squeezing. Even the export, they call the doctors, they export the doctors, right? The doctors go
Okay.
and to these places around the world. That's an income for Cuba, right?
Mhm.
So the governments of these places pays a doctor a salary. The doctor gets the salary, and some part of that goes back to the Cuban government. So the exporting of doctors, although it is a very humanitarian thing, it's also a way for doctors to Cuban government to get some resources. So the United States government is trying to ban the exportation of Cuban doctors. right, from going to these places, which also shuts down and minimizes the kind of income that those doctors are getting
Wow.
from their work, but also the income that comes in from those external states to get resources into Cuba. And it's very clear, like we saw, I thought it was really important because when I went to the Fidel Museum, which is, by the way, beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, I thought I was in Superman's lair there. It was
Yes.
well done. It was well done. And one of the things that they had, one of the exhibits shows Cuba before the armed struggle and Cuba after, and they have this wall that shows you, you know, this is the malnutrition that was happening with Cuban people. And then after they show you the edict, that the policy that was drawn up in the Constitution to solve this problem, and then they give you the historical document and the statistics that happened after they were able to implement these things. And healthcare was one of those things that was way up there for the Cuban people, because much of the people were struggling with health wise. So what the U.S. colonialism is doing is trying to bring Cuba back to a place where the people are struggling and starving and crippled by health concerns, and they're trying to turn the people against the government because the government don't have access to these things. And it's like, why don't we just I don't know what Cuba has to do to allow for the U.S. government not be a communist state, I guess, for the U.S. government to leave it alone. But like, as long as Cuba exists, it's not going to be let up. And so that's what I saw in terms of being on the street. And my sister actually went maybe like 2 years or 3 years before as a tourist. I think she might have met some people, and she was just like, yeah, there was no begging. When we went to Cuba, there was begging. And some other people also told me, like, yeah, you would never see anybody on the street begging for food. And that's what they're begging for: food. Everything else is taken care of. They have housing, education, jobs, but the allotment that they get for food has been greatly decreased because of, the embargo and having ships and things come in. And the cuisine is not, it's not like we see in Miami, like you're getting chicken and some yams every day. You know what I mean? Because there's a very different understanding of like a reality for Cuban people, and it's all because of the embargo, right? Like, we recognize that. Like, it's nothing. The Cuban government just passed this incredible law for transgender people that said that you don't have to have a sex change in order to change your gender on your, and like the most progressive policies that the people are fighting for. Yet there are these things that are happening that really is trying to push Cuba back to pre-revolutionary times.
Well, I think that both of you have really mentioned and talked about the reality of colonialism, and what that really means, and in terms of the impact on Cuba. In other words, it is a workers' government in the context of the domination of the colonial mode of production. And why, I just think that that's what an incredible society that you have described and talk about, and we see pictures of. It's very moving. It really inspires you to keep fighting for African power. And that's what African liberation would look like. But if you have any comments on the whole colonial question and the colonial mode of production and how this struggle is taking place in that, any other things that you want to say about that?
Well, I think I just want to appreciate President yesterday how you just deepen that question and, some of the real concrete, challenges that, people in Cuba are facing and how it relates to everywhere else we're seeing it in the world. And just to say, I think one of the things that that is really clear is that we continue to expose what is happening, and that we have to talk about it. We have to be able to also put in a frame that that centers it on the main contradiction, which, colonialism is, these are all symptoms of colonialism. And I think that is really important as we're having this discussion on Cuba. But in the same process, we we send medical supplies and, and we have to also forward those types of campaigns as well. I think in this process is, because in that process of that, we understand the material conditions can be overturned through, through that question of solidarity, but also in terms of addressing the real material needs of the people. And one of the things that I wanted to say on the program, just in terms of, President yesterday talked about some of the embargoes and even just the exportation of Cuban doctors, which obviously is a source of income and cripples them economically. But also we understand that, if the US had, and all these imperialist countries having medical doctors coming and they're not just coming with the medicine and the skills, they're coming with this idea of, freedom and just that. So I think there's a real ideological threat in terms of what that means. And when I was there a couple years ago, there was a limitation and bans on like a certain type of flour that, and bread is a huge part of Cubans' diet. And, they would, use flour for many things. And at the time it was being blocked coming in. And then there was even these imports or these embargoes to where when these ships and would come with all these raw materials and such, they had to stay on the dock for something like, what was their president yesterday? I think days or weeks even, or maybe months, to where crops and things like that spoil. It was days, right?
90 days.
90 days.
90 days. Wow.
90 days.
Wow.
And so those are the types of, assaults on the people as well. So, yeah, Uhuru. Go ahead.
Yes, go ahead, President yesterday.
Yeah, we had an opportunity to attend a conference, an international conference there as well. And that the president of Cuba was there and he spoke. And I think the glaring thing for me when we talk about colonialism is that, here's the two things that I recognize. We would go to these places and we would, particularly in the health sector, we would go and tell them, this is what's happening in the social sector and this is what's happening in the US. And they just like blank stare. They don't know what we're talking about. It's like, we don't have that here. We don't have, what are you saying? You saying that you have a problem with, children being kidnapped? We don't have that here. Right. You're saying that, you have this incredible mass incarceration. We don't have, they said this one young Afro-Cubana lesbian woman was like, you are living in a different reality from us. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that the colonial mode of production has created in our lives that we continue to experience in the US that they just don't have it because they have a society that's constantly working to overturn any sort of oppression that might, deal with any sector of society. In the May Day parade, this is huge. Like the army had army soldiers had like a section in the parade, and they were right next to the janitors, and they, the LGBTQIA, they had this huge section in the parade. Like it wasn't like the LGBT like pride over here. It was like you're part of the entire nation, and the whole nation was marching. So I wanted to say that, but so there's a lot of things there that they just and because the revolution happened over 50 years ago, like a lot of the young people don't even know what it was like before the revolution.
Yeah.
They just like, this is how it's always been. So I don't even know I don't have a reference point for you, right? And so we went to this conference where, the main title had fascism in it. Like it's still the fascist question. So I think that that the question of colonialism needs to be more prevalent there, because it's like Cuba is in its own bubble, and even though they're reaching out, they have these international relationships, but the relationship they need to have is with the African Revolution, right? Like, so to really expand your understanding of what is happening to you in Cuba beyond just this narrative of fascism, like because Trump or maybe Obama was a little bit, because there's a line there. Maybe Obama was a little bit better because he allowed y'all to come to Cuba with no problems or less problems. So there's this varying degree of, and they're trapped by colonialism as well, right? Like so whenever there's a president that wants to squeeze the muscle, and Cuba's going to be impacted because the entire world is not liberated. And African people have not, have access to our resources. And once that is really accomplished, when we have the African worker state on the continent of Africa that can free up the entire world, Cuba will be completely free to do whatever it is. So they have to be tied to this anti-colonial, not anti-fascist, but anti-colonial struggle that even though some of the colonial contradictions that should exist on Cuba does not around them, outside of their bubble, it does exist everywhere. And so these are the things that they have to struggle with, and push the society forward.
Wow, a really powerful summation. That this has been amazing, and maybe just we have time for maybe a few last words before we have to go. But this has been powerful. Really appreciate this analysis, African internationalist analysis of being in Cuba and the whole struggle, just the critical nature of the struggle for the liberation of Africa and African people, just how that the whole world is waiting for that to happen.
Well, I'll say join the African People's Socialist Party, join in solidarity. I mean, true solidarity with Cuba. Just imagine what Cuba will look like, what it could look like if we were all free, And so, to stand in true solidarity with the Cuban Revolution and the, upward of a worker state and the people in power, you have to, colonialism must go. Colonialism must go. So I'll say that.
And
the chairman wrote, what would a liberated Africa look like? And I wrote it in my article. And I said, this is the closest thing that I've ever experienced to that, what the chairman wrote. What would a liberated Africa look like? It's my visit in Cuba, understanding what real worker power looks like, and even understanding the labor union and the worker power aspect of it a lot more. And I would just say that in order for, I would echo what Comrade Moisey just said, is in order for Cuba to be free, the fight against colonialism has to wage forward African people centered on the African internationalist principles, like not decolonization for decolonization's sake, but just like a real principled struggle to free ourselves from this parasitic, vampiric system that only robs us from everything and keeps, the white ruling class in power. I look forward to a time when we will be able to live free and thrive. And I also echo what Comrade Moisey says, which is join the African People's Socialist Party, join the side of the African Revolution. If you're white, join the African People's Solidarity Committee, and help to bring this future and bring down the colonial mode of production so that we can experience this freedom. You don't have to go to Cuba for it. We're going to be able to experience.
We're going to be building it.
Everywhere, right?
Everywhere.
Say that,
All right. Well, thank you. Venceremos. Very powerful. Thank you so much. This has been very inspiring. And just, let's go on. Let's build African People's Solidarity Committee, and we are winning.
We are winning.
Wow, that was an incredible, brilliant African internationalist discussion with Chairwoman Penny Hess, Secretary General of the African People's Socialist Party, and Mwezi Odom, and President of the African National Women's Organization, and also Central Committee member of the African People's Socialist Party, Yejide Oronmila. And I just want to say victory to the people of Cuba, victory to the African Revolution. So I want to let people know again that we will be having Q&A shortly. So please continue to send in any questions or comments that you have on the Zoom Q&A feature or in the comments section on YouTube or Facebook. And we'll be getting to those in just a moment. Before that, I want to take a few minutes to tell you about how you can get involved in building solidarity with the African and oppressed peoples of the world and support the work of the African People's Solidarity Committee. The most important thing we can do to stand with all oppressed peoples is to join under the leadership of the African Revolution. Concretely, for white people, that means to join the African People's Solidarity Committee. And you can go to apscuhuru.org/join to fill out the intake form. You'll be hearing from a member of the National Office of Recruitment and Membership who will start the process of talking with you about what it means to become a member of APSC and go through the amazing probationary study period where you can get all of the training and education to know what it means to be a member of the party's cadre organization of white solidarity with Black power. So before we say more about that, we have a goal, as I mentioned earlier tonight, to raise $500 for the Uhuru Solidarity Center here in St. Louis. You can go to apscuhuru.org/donate and start contributing right now as I am talking. And if just 10 people gave $50 each, we would meet our goal. So let's do that. Let's surpass that goal tonight of $500. I'm very confident that we can make that happen. The funds that we raise in these APSC events every month go towards the expenses of the Uhuru Solidarity Center here in St. Louis, a building owned by the African People's Socialist Party's Black Star Industries that APSC is responsible to develop and promote as we build the movement for reparations to African people. Not only here in St. Louis, but everywhere. This building recently hosted the Reparations Summer Project, where comrades came from throughout the country to participate in building white solidarity with Black power here in St. Louis so they could go back to their cities and build the solidarity movement where they are. So the significance of the Uhuru Solidarity Center truly cannot be overstated. And we're going to look at some slides here. So the African People's Solidarity Committee is unique. There is nothing else in the world like this because it is an organization of the party. It is a strategic front of the African liberation movement behind enemy lines in the white community, created and led by the African People's Socialist Party since 1976. The mass organization of APSC is the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which has members in 130 cities in the US, Canada, Ecuador, the UK, and other places throughout the world. APSC is a cadre organization, meaning we adhere to African internationalism, the worldview of the African People's Socialist Party, a worldview to change the world, not just analyze it, a theory that demands practice. The national headquarters of APSC and USM is the Uhuru Solidarity Center at 2654 Gravois Ave, right here in the party's headquarters city of St. Louis, Missouri. This is an important space where we organize campaigns like the annual Days of Reparations to African People campaign, which is coming up, that includes the March for Reparations here in St. Louis, and work all around the country to raise reparations for the work of the party. And we want to salute everyone who participated in USM's Reparations Summer Project earlier this month. There's some great pictures from the summer project. Salute to all of our beloved comrades who came and participated in that raised over $17,000 in reparations for the Black Power Blueprint. And that's important because the main work of APSC is reparations, returning the stolen resources to the programs of the party, building political and economic power in the hands of the African working class, including the shining example of the Black Power Blueprint. And the Uhuru houses, Uhuru Foods and Pies, Black Power 96.3 FM radio, and the Burning Spear newspaper, and so much more. So following the May 16th tornado that Chairwoman Penny mentioned earlier, the Uhuru movement immediately went into action and really functioned as the true African working class power and self-government, as it always has in the African community of North St. Louis. The Uhuru House on West Florissant, not City Hall, the Uhuru House became the center for the community, for donations of supplies that were distributed to the community. And the Uhuru movement has been organizing volunteer days up to this very day, this very morning, to mobilize people to come out and participate with cleanup, rebuilding, and recovery on the north side. Another critical front of all of the work under the leadership of the party is Hands Off Uhuru. And I loved seeing those pictures of Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa on the ground in Cuba. That was awe-inspiring to see This campaign is global. It is an international anti-colonial free speech movement that is pushing back state attacks on the African liberation movement and leading the struggle for anti-colonial free speech for all colonized people. So again, the Uhuru Solidarity Center is a vital resource for those of us from the white community to be able to come together, plan, and organize events, outreach, and campaigns for reparations and solidarity with the African Revolution. So we want to call on you to contribute to the work of APSC and this center, again, by going to apscuhuru.org/donate. And you can, in addition to making a one-time contribution, you can become a sustainer, contribute monthly, like Comrade Michael, like Comrade Virginia, like Comrade Leah, and others who give every single month to the Uhuru Solidarity Center. So I should be receiving some texts, I think, or maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing, but we'll be announcing donations as they come in. So please continue to give, continue to donate at apscuhuru.org/donate. Oh,
Yeah,
here we go.
we want to thank Stephanie.
Uhuru Stephanie.
$25. Thank you so much. Comrade Lisa, $50 from Minneapolis. Comrade Sandy, $10 from Olympia, Washington. Comrade Allison, Secretary General of APSC, $25. $25, thank you. I'm going to put in 50, and Comrade Ruby here in St. Louis is putting in 50 tonight. So we're at about 210.
210, and we have Kitty
10.
doing 10, Uhuru Kitty.
So we're at 220. So
And
we're almost to half.
We're almost to
Not
half.
quite.
And let's get us to half and more. I'm going to heed the call for, it said 10 people giving $50 each. I'm going to be one of those 10 people along with you,
Right.
Chairwoman Penny. I'm going to donate $50 tonight. So that brings us to
$270.
$270 raised.
So we only need 230 more.
$230. One person could put in $230, or I think 7 or 8 more people could, not sure if that math is
I'm
right.
in there twice right now.
Okay.
Just wait, just so you all know. Okay, great.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm not. I only give it once. All right.
So we'll get our calculations in order, but we want to thank everybody who has contributed so far and everybody who is going to continue to contribute at apscuhuru.org/donate. And we just can't overstate the importance of funding this center, the Uhuru Solidarity Center. It's such an incredible space and has been the center of so much amazing organizing. And as people may know, 3 years ago, just 2 days ago, I think, today's July 30th, yesterday, 3 years ago to the day yesterday, this building was one of the buildings that was raided by the FBI in the attacks on the African People's Socialist Party, and Chairman Omali Shatella was an attempt to scare white people away from the genuine stand of solidarity with African people, which, as the chairman says, is solidarity with ourselves, is solidarity with our own humanity. That's what we have the opportunity to come into contact with when we take this stand of solidarity with African people. And I remember the chairman saying when they broke down the door of this building, they told white people what door to go through to find humanity, to find the future. So in honor of that, I want to urge people, encourage people, and invite people to go to apscuhuru.org/donate and contribute so we can meet our goal of $500 tonight.
Uhuru. Yeah, I just really want to thank everybody who has contributed and everybody who is going to contribute, and everybody who's been on tonight. This has been really great to, just have so many comrades joining us, and to say again that we are the organization of white people under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, and that any revolution, the revolution in Cuba, is led by a party. And the African People's Socialist Party is a revolutionary party.
Yes.
It is here, it is in existence to literally bring about power and self-determination into the hands of African people inside, those forcibly dispersed inside the US, and African people throughout the continent. And the African People's Socialist Party exists on on some level in half the countries, the
Wow.
so-called countries of Africa divided up for the sake of colonialism, is in 26 countries, I believe,
That's amazing.
on the continent of Africa. This is the winning side because African people are going to be free. And as was said in that interview, that when Africa is free and African people are free, the world will be free. This colonial mode of production can't continue to exist without Africa, without the resources and the humanity of being stolen of Africa and African people. So it's powerful to be on the winning side.
Yes.
This is not a movement that just is about a symptom. This is going to the heart of it. If we hate to see the oppression of the people of Palestine, then the system that does this, that carries out these atrocities, that was built on these atrocities to African and oppressed people, must go. It must go. There must be revolution. And it is on the backs of African people to lead this in unity with all oppressed and colonized people. So it's very optimistic. It's very powerful. I salute the incredible leadership of Chairman Omali Shatella, who has fought for this African revolution his entire life, and to Deputy Chair Omizane Shatella and all of the leading members of the African People's Socialist Party who fight for this and make African revolution a daily reality.
Chair Penny, really, really appreciate that night completely. And I want to also thank Comrade Johan in St. Pete, who contributed $25 tonight, which brings us to $295 raised, so only $205 left to go. And again, people can go to Uhuru Becky.
Uhuru, Johan, and Becky, and everybody else that is given.
So we only have 180 left to go. That seems very achievable. Uhuru. And as people are continuing to donate, another important way that you can take action right now is to join the African People's Solidarity Committee. And you can go to apscuhuru.org/join and fill out that form. And as I mentioned earlier, somebody from our membership office will be in touch with you within 24 hours. You will hear from someone, and we can get started on the new member process, which is incredible. We go through studies of African internationalism, studies on the dialectical materialism, democratic centralism, the structure of the party, the 14-point platform. It's an amazing process and amazing opportunity to take the next step and truly commit to fighting for African revolution as the future for all of humanity, including us as white people, as the colonizers. So again, you can go to apscuhuru.org/join to become a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee tonight. And I know people are continuing to donate, so we're going to go into the Q&A. But before the end of our program tonight, we'll give a final update on where we're at with our fundraising. Uhuru. So we have a question in the room, and we have a few questions that came in online, and we'll see if there's any new questions, but we'll start in the room here. Uhuru.
Well, Uhuru, I just really appreciate this event so much. It's just been brilliant.
You might have to come up here. People can
Probably not. I don't do these a lot.
Can people hear Stephanie's question?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good.
So yeah, it's just been so inspiring, and it's just really reinvigorated my my real genuine desire to be part of a revolutionary movement, under the leadership of the African working class, to see this to the end, really, because just to hear, how Cuba has fought and struggled to function, 90 miles away from the most vicious colonizer on the planet. And that, and so many things are solved, under that system of, just life, of living. It's so inspiring. And so I just had a comment and a question. My comment is that I remember Chairman speaking once about the revolution in Nicaragua, the brilliant revolution in Nicaragua. And he was saying how they flew in, the party flew there right after the revolution. And I was like, wait a second, how did you fly in? Like my idea then, this is like however many years ago, of a revolution was like destruction, right? Like things were destroyed and not functioning in chaos. And I remember Chairman just looking at me and saying, we just flew in. I mean, you know, the people who do the work, who make everything happen, are still doing the work and making everything happen because the people do everything. People solve everything. And I just feel like that was really reflected in what President yesterday was saying about, you know, labor, just the whole thing is really amazing. And it really also, you know, the whole thing about how democratic centralism it plays a huge role in that. And it just makes me very proud to be operating, you know, in that structure. Now you can see how important it is. So anyways, my question is not very deep. I haven't read very much about the Cuban Revolution, and if there is one book that somebody should read, I was wondering if either of you, both of you, have a recommendation.
Well, I've read a number of different kinds of books about it, but I would, by the way, I would really recommend this book by the chairman, Amalia Shatella Speaks. You can get it at Burning Spear Marketplace. And it includes his an essay on Che, among many other things. But I mean, certainly it's not exactly on the revolution, but it has a lot on it, is the biography of Che Guevara by John Anderson. I mean, that's sort of the definitive book on Che. And it does have a lot about the struggle in the Sierra Madre and, you know, just the fighting front and all that. It does have the revolution in it. It has his whole, you know, his whole life as well. But sometimes I read the book twice. The second time I just skipped to the middle of the book and went to, what really happened to make the revolution. And it is and there are videos, there are things on YouTube. There's, when they came down into Havana and, there's a lot of information that's out there in various movies and films as well.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Chairman Penny. And I forgot to shout out all the places where people are tuning in from. So I want to do that really quick. I want to thank people who are tuning in from Oakland, California, Newcastle, Pennsylvania, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Los Angeles, California, Columbus, Ohio, of course, here in St. Louis, St. Anthony, Newfoundland, yes, Louisville, Kentucky, Washington State, the Ivory Coast, St. Petersburg, Florida, Gainesville, Florida, and New Orleans, Louisiana. So very, very appreciative for everybody tuning in from all those places. Those are the places where people have let us know where they're tuning in. So if you haven't done so yet, feel free to do so in the comments. And we have some comments and questions that came in from the registration form for the event, Chairwoman Penny. One was from Comrade Paulo in Orange County, California. And his
on, but always great to hear from Comrade Paulo.
Absolutely. Also a very important part of Hands Off Uhuru.
Yes, absolutely.
So here's a comment from Paulo. He says, long live the international solidarity between Cubans and Africans from the motherland and the diaspora. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Paulo.
And then August in Minneapolis says, I look forward to the discussion, especially to hear about or point to what Che and the Cubans learned from their experience in the Congo in 1965. His diary specifically, and how that enabled them later in their African proletarian internationalism.
Well, of course, there's a lot of books you can read about that. There are Che's own diaries from being in Africa. The thing, he fought in Angola also and in other places from what I remember, and I certainly did read his Africa diaries, but just from what I can remember, I believe that Che couldn't be in Congo very long because the situation was, if the US recognized that he were there and the people were fighting a revolution, Africans were against you, they felt that the US would particularly attack them if they knew that Che was there. So I believe they asked him not to come to, that's my understanding. I have to check that. But that he was asked not to come to Africa, I mean, to Congo. And I think he was there, but only for a brief time. But certainly he went around the world fighting. He was in Angola. There's great films about that, actually, that has some footage and the role that Cuba played in Angola after they won their revolution was amazing. Something I had never really known about that much, but it's really depicted in some very powerful films and footage. So, yeah.
There's one in particular we've screened in the past. It was called Cuba, an African Odyssey.
Oh yeah, an African
was
Odyssey.
really
Yeah, that
great
was
documentary.
amazing. It's really, really good.
So we have some comments online as well from Mark Friedman from the
Hands Off Cuba.
Hands Off Cuba committee.
Mark,
Yes.
great to see you on.
So Mark's been with us on the event tonight, and Mark wrote in, Los Angeles Hands Off Cuba is present. Thank you to the African People's Socialist Party for sending a prominent leader of your organization, Yejide, to Cuba on our delegation. Jacksonville, Florida is setting up new Cuba support committees, and the APSP is speaking at the founding meeting Saturday at the Yellow House.
Wow.
Thanks for those positive comments from Yejide and Mwezi. The Cubans are resilient. They will not bend to imperialism. Their international medical brigades and military campaigns against apartheid to defend Angola are supported worldwide. Their internationalism is why Washington tries to overthrow and create regime change.
Uhuru. And so powerful. And I mean, I just think, again, when African people have power, because the internationalism of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party is beyond anything, it is just the same vein as what we are talking about in terms of Cuba, because when the party had solidarity with other forces, with Nicaragua, Ireland, even, and certainly indigenous and Mexican people inside the US, they would give them anything. They would give them anything. It was 100%, and it still is, and it's really beautiful to see that what true internationalism means, so yeah.
We also had a question from Charles in New Orleans, who asks, where is the Che movement today?
I would say the African People's Socialist Party is Chairman Omali Yeshitela. This is the Che movement of today.
Yes.
Fighting for revolution, fighting for the power of the people.
And we have some details from Mark, I believe, about the event that I think he was referring to earlier. Defend Cuba's International Medical Brigades, Thursday, July 31st, 8 p.m. Havana time, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Learn about the fundraising campaign to send 150 urgently needed pacemakers to Cuba.
Wow.
Campaign with us to defend Cuba's health service from Trump's and the U.S. government's economic war. Register now. So I think this was put in the chat. There's a Zoom link for that. He said, thank you to the APSP for this great program.
Thank you, Mark.
So we are coming to the end. We're going to be giving some announcements of where we're at with the fundraising. I had a question, actually, Chairman Penny, if that's okay. I was wondering, the chairman I think this has been covered in a lot of different ways, but I remember the chairman using the term socialist morality to describe the Cuban Revolution and its internationalism, its relationship to other colonized peoples and struggles. And when you were talking about, Angola, I was remembering in that documentary, it talked about that Cuba went into Angola. Cuba had a relationship with the Soviet Union at the time, and the Soviet Union did not want them to go into Angola, but they did it anyway because that was their position, was that was the right thing to do based on their stand of international solidarity. So I was wondering if you could just talk about that question of internationalism and socialist morality that Cuba has always represented.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no morality in a system that's built on the enslavement of an entire continent of people and out genocide, of which, we can see all around us here in the US if we look and open our eyes. And, the country, the system that's at war with everybody, that steals everybody's resources, there's no morality. I mean, that's immoral, if you think of in terms of humanity. And I think that it's really powerful to see a whole country, of people who really have nothing, but yet they are one with everybody else. And that's what the African People's Socialist Party represents.
Yes.
It represents what Cuba is.
Yes.
And that is the world that we want to live in.
Yes.
We want to be part of that, and this is how we do it. And that's what reparations means. It means that it's turning back over the resources that we have at the expense of African people, of Cuba, of the indigenous people, of Mexican people.
Thank you, Chairman Penny. I think the word inspiring that's been used tonight is just the perfect description for the Cuban Revolution, for Chairman Omali Yeshitela, for the African People's Socialist Party, and for this wonderful event and that incredible interview with Secretary General Mwezi Odom and ANWO President Yejide Oramila. So I just want to give a round of applause to all the presentations. Oh, excellent. Okay, we won't move on from that.
350.
All right, so we want to thank Anonymous.
We love Anonymous.
Yes. Thank you so much, Anonymous, for contributing $20 for Peru. And we also want to thank Wendy in Oakland, who put in $10 for Peru, Wendy. So we only have $150 left to raise.
Wow.
We got to make that happen. Let's go ahead. Go to apsc.org/donate. That's 15 people giving $10. So let's make this happen. Fund the Uhuru Solidarity Center. Build white solidarity with Black power. And if any more donations come in, I'm going to just stop what I'm saying and announce them. So continue to contribute at apscuhuru.org/donate. And before we go into the announcements for tonight, I just wanted to... yes.
Sorry, I just want to say I want to do a 10 to be one of the $10 more to be one of the 15.
Oh,
there we go. We got $10 from Stephanie here. Stephanie.
I also want to say, though, that I don't want something that everybody can't have. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that. I'm so inspired hearing about Cuban life.
Yes.
Because everybody has. I don't want it.
Yes.
If everybody doesn't have it. So let's raise the 150.
Let's do it. Yes.
Like, this is our center.
Yes.
Under the leadership of the party. And it's ours. That's what we want to contribute to as reparations to something that is in the hands of the people. Like, you know what I mean?
Right on. Stephanie. Thank you so much for that. And I hope everybody could hear that on Zoom. That was a very powerful statement from Comrade Stephanie, and to totally unite. And we want to just really put that out there and win people to continue contributing as we go forward with our program. I'm going to be going into the announcements. So that would mean 14 more people, just to be clear. 14 more people doing what Stephanie just did, taking that stand and putting in just another $10 towards our goal tonight. So I'll be another one. How about that? I'm going to put in $10 more.
It's really historic to have a center that says unity through reparations on the outside of it in the white community of St. Louis.
Yes,
where people have told us in the neighborhood they're very proud to have this in their neighborhood.
Yes.
To know that that the stand can be taken. That white people can take this stand. And that's what we're raising resources for, to fund this building And, you know, it takes a lot to have a building. And
Yes.
this is the party's building and we want to totally take care of it and be able to pay it off, you know, have a whole campaign to get this mortgage paid.
That's right.
Yes.
Uhuru. So that's what you're supporting again when you go to apscuhuru.org, and I see more donations coming in. We have
Indigo
from
20
Comrade Indigo 20.
and Jesse another 10.
So that means that would be, so that's 40 right there. So only 110 left to go. That's 11 people. Only 11 people doing $10 each. Or
Lisa is
Oh.
putting in.
Here we go. Through Lisa. Another
And
10 from Lisa. All right.
400.
10 more. Just 10 more people doing
One
$10 each.
person could put in 100.
Yeah, or one person contributing, or two people contributing $50. And on it goes. So
Or
it's
4 people, 25.
4 people, 25.
Let's get
That's
it
right.
done.
Yes. And there's more names popping up here, so it's hard to move on. Yeah, we're Raya, $25. We only need $75. 3 people doing what Raya just did. 3 people contributing $25, and we will make our goal tonight and be able to.
Charles Davis.
Whoa,
from
okay.
Louisiana.
Uhuru Charles, supporting the Che movement of today. Uhuru.
And just to say, the Black is Back convention is
$25.
going to be in New Orleans.
Yes.
Everybody,
Yes.
I'm determined to go one way or another. You've got to be there. It's going to be very exciting.
So only $50 left, and I see someone typing in here. So I think it's coming. I think someone is donating $50 right now.
25.
Okay.
Excellent.
St. Pete, how mysterious. Janice! Uhuru Janice! $25 from Comrade Janice.
Right.
So we only have $25 left to raise. Okay.
Wow.
5 people doing $5 each.
I feel like we're gonna go over. Like,
We're gonna go over. Yeah, we're gonna go
people
over.
are gonna donate.
We're gonna go over.
We're going to go over.
And we've got another question in the Q&A. I'm gonna switch over to that real quick while people.
We're a little over time here.
Joan says, I missed the first part of your presentation, but I hope to go back and view it all. I missed the first part. I'm wondering if you mentioned the Cuban 5 heroes, Antonio, Fernando, Gerardo, Rene, and Ramon, the true heroes of the never-ending revolution.
I didn't mention that, but thank you for mentioning that. I don't know if we have a picture of the Cuban 5. But yes, I do unite with what you were saying. Very powerful stand and fight
Yes.
for the Cuban 5.
And for
And
anyone,
if anybody doesn't know about them, please Google
yes.
them.
And just to say quickly on the Cuban 5 that I'm from Miami, so I remember hearing a lot about the Cuban 5 back in the day, because Miami is basically the biggest hotbed of
Reaction.
CIA-backed,
Right.
anti-communist, anti-humanity type of activity, where the CIA and the people that President Yejide was talking about, like the white ruling class that left Cuba after the revolution, came to Miami and actually worked with the CIA to carry out terrorist attacks against the people and government of Cuba, hijacking planes and doing other kinds of horrific things to attack and assault that revolutionary country and people. The Cuban 5 were 5 Cuban men who tried to stop them, who tried to stop these terrorists from attacking Cuba, and they were charged with the same charges that they brought against the Uhuru 3, among other charges, and convicted and put in prison. They are now free, actually, but it took a long for years.
5 years
Yeah.
or more.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that being mentioned. And I'm going to toggle back over to the spreadsheet here, where our calculators are continuing to plug away.
Right.
So we'll come back to that. There's only $25.
Ready to wrap up.
We're about ready to wrap up. We're going to go into announcements as people continue to contribute to make that last $25 for our goal tonight. And before I go into the announcements, Chairwoman Penny, any closing comments you would like to make?
Well, we are winning because we're under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party.
Yes.
Again, anybody who hasn't been to St. Louis, come on over and see the work that Chairman Omali Chatella, Deputy Chair Onizane, Ishitella have put on the ground, the Black Power blueprint. There is nothing like it in the United States. The closest thing like it could be Cuba.
Yes.
But it's very, very beautiful and powerful to see. It is the power of the people.
Yes. Thank you, Chairwoman Penny. And now I'm going to go into some very exciting announcements. And I just want to thank everybody who participated in this great event tonight, everybody who donated. Another special thank you to Secretary General Mwezi Odom and Annual President Yejide Orinmila, and to Chairwoman Penny Hess. And of course, salute to our leadership, Chairman Omali Shatella and and Deputy Chair Ona Zanea Shatella, the African People's Socialist Party. So thank you, Stephanie. So first of all, mark your calendar for the next APSC study happening. There's the Cuban 5. Okay, they were up there for a minute.
Oh, I don't see it.
Mark your calendars for the next APSC study. Okay.
Cuban 5, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Next Wednesday, August 13th at 6:30.
Next 2 weeks.
Okay. Oh yeah, you're right. So happening in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from tonight, on August 13th at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, we will continue with part 2 of a study on the theory of African internationalism. What is African internationalism? What makes it different from any other political theory out there? And why is it in our interests as white people to become African internationalists? You do not need to have attended part 1 to participate in part 2, but we recommend you go to youtube.com/Uhuru Solidarity and review it in advance. And you can register for that study by going to apscuhuru.org/study. And next, I would like to announce, actually, oh, I see what happened. If we go back one slide, I will also announce that next Wednesday, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is having our monthly mass meeting. Everyone is invited to come. This is going to be at 6:30 Central, and you can register at tinyurl.com/reparationsaugust 2025. And the focus of this meeting for the month of August is to launch this year's Days of Reparations to African People campaign, the most important annual campaign that the Solidarity Movement is called upon by the party to carry out, to go into the white community and win reparations on a massive scale. So you can join us next Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. and find out how you can participate in making reparations a reality on the ground, wherever you are, whoever you are. Uhuru. On Thursday, August 7th, there will be at 6 Eastern, 5 Central, 3 Pacific, an important event hosted by Black Power 96 Radio, public media funding under attack. An update on Black Power 96 Radio's fight back, including the lawsuit that was filed against the Pinellas County Commissioners for revoking grant funds that had been awarded to the radio station in St. Petersburg, and the ongoing fight to push that forward through the appeal process and through the movement in St. Petersburg and beyond. So that's going to be happening on August 7th, and that will feature the attorney for APEDF, for the Black Power 96, which is Luke Leroux, who will give an update on the radio station's legal fight back, as well as others who will be speaking on that event. So you can register at blackpower96.org/webinar. We want to encourage, and before I go to the Burning Spear, I want to let people know this Saturday, so we don't have a slide for this one, but if you could zoom in, this Saturday, the Northside Independent Neighborhood Association is holding its first block party. This is going to be absolutely incredible. As you can see on the poster, it says "All Out for Unity in Our Community." And this is happening from 11 to 4 on West Florissant Adelaide to Alice. It's going to be an amazing program. There's some wonderful performers that are going to be there, poets, singers, and other kinds of artists. Free food, music, games, basketball, children's activities, tornado relief resources, vendors, and you don't want to miss this. If you're here in St. Louis or in any of the surrounding areas, you should come down to St. Louis and participate. And the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and Uhuru Planet will be very honored, actually, to be one of the vendors at the Northside Community Block Party being held by Nina this Saturday, August 2nd. So we encourage people to subscribe to get the Burning Spear news and analysis sent to your email inbox. You can visit theburningspear.substack.com. And you definitely want to do that. The Substack is amazing. The articles, the content that comes regularly into your inbox is absolutely invaluable. And we want to also encourage people to check out the dynamic One Africa Worldview podcast on youtube.com/@theburningspear. They go live every Monday at 5 o'clock Eastern and sum up world events, current events, popular culture from an African internationalist standpoint. It's absolutely amazing. You can also catch up on past episodes at the Burning Spear YouTube as well. And a reminder to tune in to the White Lies Shattered series of the Reparations in Action FM radio show and podcast. You can listen Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central on Black Power 96.3 FM in St. Petersburg, Florida, or you can listen to episodes on demand. There are tons of episodes you can go through and listen to, including the most recent ones at uhurusolidarity.podbean.com or any podcasting app. If you have on your phone, you can just search for White Lies Shattered and find the podcast of the African People's Solidarity Committee. In addition to all of these great online resources, we are, as the party says, as the chairman says, we are an organization of organizers. We are on the ground doing outreach, talking with white people face to face about colonialism, about reparations, about solidarity. So we call on all APSC and USM members and supporters to read and distribute the best organizing tool we have, the Burning Spear newspaper. Now is the time to order bundles of the August issue, which you can do by going to theburningspear.store. And a reminder that you can find resources to support your spear distribution efforts at apsc.uhuru.org/spear toolkit. And last but not least, Uhuru Planet Reparations Apparel. And I'm wearing my Che shirt from Uhuru Planet right now. And Chairwoman Penny has the Colonialism Caused Climate Change shirt. Uhuru Planet Reparations Apparel is clothing, accessories, and more that are forwarding the culture of white reparations to African people, an institution of Black Star Industries. Go to the online store at uhuruplanet.com to check out the newest design, Kick the Ass of the Ruling Class. And my final announcement of tonight is that Comrade Johan donated $25. We met our goal, Uhuru! Reparations? Uhuru Johan. All right, so thank you all so much. Thank you to everybody who donated. Thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight, who participated in the discussion. Make sure you visit uhurusolidarity.org and apsc.uhuru.org to learn more about how you can be a part of this incredible movement. Thank you so much to our special guests, to everyone participating. We say solidarity with the North Side, solidarity with the people of Cuba, solidarity with Palestine, victory to the African Revolution, reparations now, unity through
Reparations.
Uhuru.
Venceremos.
Venceremos.
Uhuru.